going to be streaming to YouTube. Yes, okay. And then,
My camera's on, right? I don't see
yep, your
myself.
camera is on right
Okay.
now. So,
Okay, I'll turn it off when I start.
all right. All right, so I have 11:59.
Okay.
12 o'clock. I'm going to start the webinar. So I'll let you
Okay.
know. I'm going to take myself off quick and then,
Okay. Perfect.
okay, Karen, we are live. You're ready to go.
Sounds good. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for working towards positive education outcomes, mental health, and special education. Next slide. My name is Karen Malka, and I am a parent advocate and the coordinator of the Children's Mental Health Project here at PACER. I have a background in education and have two daughters who live with different disabilities, including learning disabilities and mental health needs. Next slide. Today, we're going to talk about the special education process, working with your child's IEP team to address mental health and behaviors, provide you with some examples of positive supports and interventions, and how to navigate disagreements using dispute resolution options. If you have questions, you are welcome to put those in the Q&A box, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. Next slide. Understanding the special education process. Next slide. This is just a quick overview. Let's start with why evaluate. Anytime parents or school district staff have concerns that a child may have a disability that affects their ability to access their education, they can request a special education evaluation. We always recommend that parents make this request in writing and share what your concerns are and the impact on your child's education. School districts are obligated under the federal law called Child Find to identify students in their district who they suspect may have a disability and be in need of special education services and to respond to parents' requests for evaluations. Once the district receives your request for an evaluation, they should respond to you in a prior written notice, either agreeing or refusing to evaluate. If they agree, they will invite you to a planning meeting or send you a proposed evaluation plan. If they refuse, they must tell you why in writing, and you have the right to disagree with their decision and request dispute resolution, which we will discuss more in a little while. There is no way to determine whether a child will or will not qualify for special education without first completing a comprehensive initial evaluation that includes assessments to address all of your concerns. Parental consent is required for initial evaluations and the start of services for an initial IEP. Once parents sign consent for a special education evaluation, the IEP team has 30 school days to complete the evaluation and share the results. At this meeting, parents who are part of the IEP team will work together with the evaluation team to determine if the child is eligible under one or more of 13 disability categories for special education. If the student does meet criteria for special education, the team will draft an IEP based on the needs identified in the evaluation. The team has 30 school days to draft that initial proposed IEP. The team will document your child's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance to describe their educational needs. From there, the team will discuss what skills the child needs to build and will propose goals and objectives with instructional strategies that could be achieved over the next year. Once goals are identified, the team will determine how much service time the child needs to make adequate progress on their goals. Finally, the team will then decide on the appropriate educational placement for your student. Placement is determined by how much time the student spends receiving special education services outside of the general education setting. The district must ensure that students have access to their free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment possible. Next slide. When the school district completes the evaluation, they should use a variety of assessment tools and strategies to gather relevant academic and developmental information, including information from parents. Evaluation should be comprehensive, and schools must use more than one assessment or measure to make their determination. Next slide. A functional behavioral assessment can be completed as a standalone assessment when new behavior concerns arise, or it can be completed as part of a special education evaluation to address behaviors that get in the way of a student's learning or the learning of others. An FBA should help the IEP team find ways to positively support a child at school. These assessments are often completed by the school psychologist or a behavioral specialist in the school or district. This information should be gathered from a variety of sources, including behavior incident reports and data, formal and informal observations, input from parents, educators, and the student, other team members, and assessments as they are relevant to the concerns and needs of the child, such as an occupational therapist for a student with high sensory needs to better understand the role that those needs have on behaviors, and other assessments completed as part of a comprehensive evaluation. The FBA should identify the behavior concern, triggers or antecedents to the behavior, functions of the behavior, such as avoidance, attention, or sensory seeking, desired replacement behaviors, and supports and strategies to help the student learn the replacement behaviors and building skills. Next slide. The special education process is designed to protect the rights of children and youth identified as students with a disability and their access to a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment possible. The role of evaluation is to determine two things. Number one, eligibility, and number two, identifying a student's individual educational needs. Students with mental health challenges may meet criteria in one or more of 13 educational disability categories. The only way to determine eligibility is through the completion of a comprehensive special education evaluation. Students with behavioral health challenges may also qualify for Section 504 or a 504 plan if they do not qualify for special education. Parents can disagree with the school's evaluation and request an independent educational evaluation at the district's expense. Next slide. Although the format of an IEP may vary from district to district, the state and federal law requires several content areas to be included in every IEP. These are present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, known as the PLAF, measurable annual IEP goals, transition planning and transfer of rights, services and modifications, least restrictive environment explanation, Minnesota accountability and graduation assessments, and extended school year. If you would like more information about these or any of the other content areas listed on this slide, you can find that information in Pacer Center's Guide to the IEP for Minnesota Parents, or feel free to call Pacer and ask to speak to an advocate. Next slide. Strategies for planning when mental health relates to needed behavior supports in an individualized education plan. Next slide. These are the core members required to participate at your child's IEP meetings. If a member is unavailable, you can agree to excuse them or request that the meeting be rescheduled so all members can be present. Others with knowledge of the child and their needs may also be invited by the school or parent. For example, your child may work with the school social worker, DAPE instructor, or occupational therapist. When behaviors are a concern, the school psychologist or a behavior specialist may be working with the team to help meet those specific needs, and you may want their input at these meetings as well. Sometimes parents want to include the child's therapist or county case manager they work with outside of school, or bring a friend or relative to help the parent take notes. Next slide. Parents play a crucial role in helping their children be successful at school. When schools and parents work together as partners, students reach even higher levels of success. Whether parents are providing a safe home that encourages learning and appropriate behavior, or working with teachers and administrators on specific learning goals for their child, it's vital for parents to support their child's education. Some common challenges that may arise include different interpretations of the IEP and what's being implemented, vague language in objectives that do not mention instruction or a way to measure progress, accommodations or adaptations that are not specific enough, or concerns about accommodations not being followed. IEP meetings and other school meetings are crucial parts of a child's educational program. A parent's responsibility extends beyond giving consent and accepting explanations. Asking questions, bringing up issues to discuss, gathering information, and clarifying points are all part of the parent's role. Effective communication goes both ways. To have understanding and support, both the professionals and the parents need to make effective decisions about the child's educational program. To foster meaningful communication, parents can make sure that the focus stays on the child. The key to effective communication is preparation and willingness to be actively involved in planning the child's educational program. Your efforts on communicating what is working and what is not working will help to solve challenges your child is experiencing. Next slide. If you decide you need an IEP team meeting to discuss your concerns or get clarification on what is happening, be planful and be prepared. Know in advance the important points to discuss and questions to ask. Write them down and check them off as they are addressed. Think also about ideas for solutions that you might be able to offer. Does your child need regular check-ins with a para during independent work times? Does your child need a visual schedule each morning that they can refer to that can help them stay on track? Next slide. Some questions to help you think through possible issues you may want to address are: what expectations are not being met? What are the built-in assumptions about meeting those expectations? What accommodations, modifications, or adult supports does my child need to meet expectations? What skills does my child need to develop to meet those expectations? How will instruction be provided to help my child build needed skills? Next slide. Let's look at some common expectations in a school setting. Sometimes when a child is not meeting expectations, they may be viewed as non-compliant because our bias and assumptions are based on only what we observe. But for students with a wide variety of disabilities, including physical, cognitive, developmental, and behavioral, we need to re-examine those assumptions and ask why the child isn't able to meet the expectation. This allows us to begin to think about how we can help build skills and provide appropriate accommodations and modifications. This might be anything from modeling expected behavior and how to ask for help to what we do during attendance taking, or by promoting a student with the next expected step, or checking in after instructions are given to see if they need help. Next slide. So what happens when needs are unmet? When those expectations and the assumptions of skill level to meet those expectations are not occurring, the child is likely having behaviors that can result in an increase in mental health symptoms and a decrease in school success. Think again about your child or the child you are teaching. Are you seeing work refusal, school avoidance, withdrawn or disengagement from learning? Are you seeing your child just walk away and give up? Are you seeing an increase in frustration, anger, or even physical or verbal aggression? Once you recognize that needs are not being met, you may want to ask for an IEP team meeting. Next slide. When meeting with the team to plan the IEP, come prepared to listen and to openly share your insights and ideas. Listening will help you to gather information about your child and to understand other viewpoints. State your concerns clearly. Communicate in an honest, respectful, and direct manner. Asking questions can be an effective way of clarifying a point and keeping the line of communication open. Comments and questions should be directed to the person who is best informed to answer them. Restate your concerns if you are not heard the first time. Be confident. A parent should never feel guilty, embarrassed, or reluctant about asking questions or assertively pursuing the appropriate services for the child. It is your role and your right. Work together. Remember that neither you nor the professionals have all the answers. Work together as a team to find solutions. Everyone at the meeting has the same goal: to provide an appropriate educational program for the child. Parents are a critical part of special education. To be an active member, the parent must be able to participate in a way that is helpful. Your first job as a parent, we're on the next slide. Thank you. Parents are a critical part of special education. To be an active member, the parent must be able to participate in a way that is helpful. Your first job as a parent is to represent your child and what they need. You are the best source of information about your child, so have confidence in your authority to speak to the team about your child. Keep good records. Save progress reports, test scores, emails, your own notes and those from teachers, incident and behavior reports, a copy of the evaluation and the IEP in an easy-to-access folder or online system. Before a meeting, identify the priority needs and concerns you'd like to address. Sometimes parents will document in writing exactly what their concerns are to the case manager prior to the meeting to help ensure they will be included in the agenda for the discussion. You are permitted to bring a friend, family member, or other support person to the meeting as your note taker or an extra set of ears. IEP meetings can sometimes involve emotions that make it difficult to effectively process the information we're hearing. Bringing a support person to the meeting helps us remember and sometimes to correctly interpret what we are hearing. Using email can be a quick way to document something or to express a concern. We often suggest that parents write a draft, leave it for a while, and then return to review and make sure it is what you want to say and how you want to say it, keeping in mind that you have the right to your opinions and your concerns. Finally, you have the right to formally disagree with any proposed changes to the IEP. Be sure to get any proposed amendments in writing. Next slide. Let's look at some examples of supports and interventions that are grounded in principles of wellness and recovery. Next slide. The Federal Center for Mental Health and the Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration have researched how to help individuals improve their health and wellness. This research led them to identify guiding principles of wellness and recovery. It's worth reflecting on these principles when you consider how to communicate your child's mental health needs to the school and to support the team in planning for your child's educational needs. As you think about your child, you might ask the following questions. Do they believe that they can make friends, improve in their schoolwork, graduate, go on to post-secondary education, or obtain gainful employment? Have they ever been asked how they would like to gain independence and make decisions that are informed, build on their individual strengths, and reach their goals? Are they supported by a highly individualized plan that emphasizes their strengths rather than just their needs? Do they have a network of people who are there to provide hope encouragement, and support, including those who can suggest strategies and resources for change? Are their values, traditions, and beliefs considered? If they've experienced trauma, do they have services and supports that are trauma-informed to foster safety and trust? Are they respected, and do they feel accepted for who they are? Do they have a system of support that also includes their family and community? By using the guiding principles of wellness and recovery, paying attention to the expectations and skills needed to be in school successfully, and recognizing the barriers schools may have related to mental health, we can become informed about how to communicate what our child needs to help them have a successful school experience. Next slide. When it comes to teaching behaviors, using positive behavior intervention and supports, otherwise known as PBIS, schools will typically identify 3 to 5 simple rules that they feel will contribute to a positive school climate and successful social, behavioral, and academic outcomes. Simple rules may include: be respectful, be responsible, be safe. Schools will often have posters around the school that list these expectations to reinforce the teaching that is happening in the classroom. It's also important that these rules are very clearly defined so that both staff and students understand what is expected. Students must be given enough direction to successfully abide by the rules. So how might a school accomplish this clarification? When it comes to a rule, such as be safe, staff might provide students with examples of what it looks like to be respectful. Keep your hands to yourself, or tell an adult if there is a problem. It can also be helpful to provide examples of behaviors that would not be considered following the rule. Using safety as an example, again, that might include hitting a student that has tried to hit you won't work. Instead, find an adult to help you. MDE states PBIS school teams must establish clearly defined outcomes that relate to students' academic and social behavior, systems that support staff practices, practices that support student success, and data to guide decision making. Next slide. This slide provides an example, a sample PBIS plan used in schools. The first step is to identify the 3 broad behavioral expectations we discussed previously, such as be respectful, be responsible, be safe. The second step is to identify in each of the 3 educational models what it means to be respectful, responsible, and safe. The third step is to teach those expectations and model their everyday use. It can be helpful to ask your team how expectations are modeled and taught by staff, and to replicate this at home for consistency. The fourth step is to catch the positive behavior when it happens through reinforcement. The fifth step is to tie a reinforcement plan to the behavior when it happens. This plan would be different than a traditional behavior plan entailing behaviors and interventions. The last step is to consider meaningful consequences if expected rules or behaviors are not followed. It's important to keep in mind, however, refusal to do something needs to be validated and its reasons understood before giving a consequence. Always assume that the student cannot do what you are asking before you assume that they won't do it. When we view a student's refusal to follow an expectation as something they may not yet be equipped to meet, we can use the opportunity to teach and practice the behavior consistently rather than punish the child in hopes that consequences will result in behavioral changes. Next slide. Navigating IEP team disagreements when they arise. Next slide. We'll start the discussion about addressing disagreements by covering some basic information about a document you'll see from the district called a prior written notice. Anytime a district proposes or refuses to initiate or change the identification, evaluation, educational placement of a student, or the provision of FAPE, free and appropriate public education, the district must provide parents with a prior written notice, or sometimes referred to as a PWN. The PWN will state the actions being proposed and or refused by the district, the reasons for their proposal or refusal, other options that were considered by the team, and the data they are using to support the proposal or refusal. The PWN must be in writing. When you receive the prior written notice, you have the right to request an informal meeting with the appropriate IEP team members if you are in disagreement with what the PWN states. Keep in mind that signing an IEP is not always required. If it is not an initial IEP, which does require your signature before services are provided, you have 14 calendar days from the time you receive a prior written notice to state your agreement or disagreement. If you do not sign and return the prior written notice within the 14-day window, the proposal or refusal decision may go into effect whether you agree with it or not. To disagree, you must object in writing on the PWN by the 14th calendar day. If you don't sign the IEP, that doesn't notify the team that you disagree. You have to use the prior written notice to inform them of disagreement with the plan. Next slide. Now we're going to take a look at options you have to address disagreements through dispute resolution meeting options. Let's start by talking about conciliation conference. When you object to a prior written notice, you have the right to request a conciliation conference. The conciliation conference is unique to Minnesota. It typically includes a higher level of administrative staff, such as the Director of Special Education or a special education supervisor. This meeting does not require the full IEP team, but does need someone in attendance who has the authority to make changes or resolve disagreements. Conciliation provides you with the opportunity to talk about the areas where you disagree with the team's proposal and to share the resolution you'd like to see. For example, if your child has been struggling with increasing behaviors, you may receive a prior written notice proposing more direct service time, resulting in a change of placement to a more restrictive setting and less time in the general education classroom. It's often helpful to first listen to what the team has already tried as they sought to help your child with the challenge they are experiencing. In order to understand more about your child's struggles, you can request that the school gather more data or try additional accommodations or burst of services to ensure your child has access to an education in the least restrictive environment. You might also consider requesting a reevaluation if you feel one might be needed to rule out an underlying academic need or other disability that may be a contributing factor. A conciliation conference must be held within 10 calendar days of your request and is provided at no cost to you. Within 5 school days after the final conciliation conference, the district must provide you with a written memo describing the district's final proposed offer of service. This may include changes to the IEP and another consent form. Next slide. Mediation is another meeting option that can be used for resolving disagreements between school staff and parents. Topics addressed in a mediation might include disability identification, evaluation, educational placement, manifestation determination, interim alternative placement, provision of free and appropriate public education, or tension in communication between the family and school. For example, you might have attended a conciliation conference, but you and the district are still in disagreement over the school's refusal to evaluate your child. Or you believe the school's evaluation does include data that meets the state entrance criteria for special education services, but the district did not qualify them for those services. Or if you want your child in a less restrictive environment than what the school is proposing. Mediation is voluntary for both parties and is provided at no cost. A neutral mediator is assigned by the Minnesota Department of Education. The mediator's role is to facilitate effective problem-solving conversation. They help ensure parties clearly communicate their concerns, find common ground, offer possible solutions, and help both parties reach agreements. When an agreement is reached, the mediator writes it into a document that, once signed by both parties, becomes a binding agreement. Mediation may also be used in lieu of a resolution session to try to resolve issues when a due process complaint has been filed. Next slide. A facilitated team meeting is another voluntary dispute resolution option which can be requested by either the school or the parent. A facilitator is assigned by the Minnesota Department of Education to facilitate the meeting, promote effective communication in the development of an appropriate IEP, help keep the focus on the child, keep members on task, help clarify questions, and to address conflicts if they arise during the meeting. A facilitated team meeting might be a good option if you continue to disagree with the content of the IEP. These content areas might include what are often referred to as the present levels, the goals and objectives of the educational plan, prioritization of skills to be developed, services, accommodations, modifications, testing accommodations, assistive technology, transportation, transition supports and services, least restrictive environment, or a student's positive behavioral intervention plan. Typically, the IEP is written during the meeting, and the team takes time to address each concern throughout the IEP. The objective of a facilitated team meeting is a completed IEP that the school and the parents agree to. Parents still have the option of 14 calendar days via prior written notice to agree or disagree with the final proposal. When it comes to dispute resolution meetings, families are welcome to call an advocate with questions. While advocates don't typically attend IEP meetings, they may be available to attend dispute resolution meetings if they are included in the scheduling process. Advocates can help you understand your rights, options, and how to address your concerns with the team to advocate for your child. Even if they are unable to attend, advocates can assist you in preparation for the meeting as well as next steps following the meeting. Next slide. Typically, parents are encouraged to utilize conciliation, mediation, or facilitated team meeting processes to resolve disagreements before proceeding to a hearing. As a parent, you do have the right to file a due process complaint before an administrative law judge from the Office of Administrative Hearings for issues related to disability identification, evaluation, educational placement, manifestation determination, or the provision of free and appropriate public education. The parent or district must request a hearing for a due process complaint in writing within 2 years of the date the party knew or should have known about the matter. The party filing a due process complaint must provide a copy of the complaint to the other party and to the Minnesota Department of Education. MDE will forward the request to the Office of Administrative Hearings and to an administrative law judge. The Office of Administrative Hearings will determine if the case has standing, and if so, will hear the case. If the parent filed a due process complaint and requested a hearing, the school district must arrange for a resolution meeting within 15 calendar days to attempt to resolve the issues prior to going to a hearing. If both parties agree, the hearing may be waived of mediation used in lieu of the resolution setting. If a resolution is reached prior to the hearing, it is written and signed by all parties. This is a legally binding document. If after the 30-day resolution period, the complaint has not resolved, a due process hearing may occur. In 2020, MDE reported that of the 24 complaints brought to them, only one went to a hearing. Parents need to be aware that the district will usually have an attorney. While it's not required, guidance or representation for parents from an attorney can be very helpful to parents when navigating this legal process. A final legally binding decision is made by the hearing office within 45 calendar days following the expiration of the 30-day resolution period. There is an appeal process available to both parties if they are not satisfied with the final decision. Additional information can be located on the MDE website or by speaking with someone in the MDE Compliance and Assistance Department. Next slide. State complaints. If you have concerns that the school district did not follow or is not following federal or state special education laws, regulations, or rules, you have the right to file a complaint with the Minnesota Department of Education. A complaint must be in writing and include a description of what the district is doing or not doing, and any facts or data you have supporting your claim. The alleged violation must have happened within the last calendar year of the date MDE receives your complaint. The Division of Assistance and Compliance at MDE will make a final decision within 60 days. This decision may include a corrective action plan, which would be sent to the parent and the school district. A complaint investigation and mediation can be requested at the same time. If a complaint investigation and a due process hearing are requested on the same issue, the complaint will be placed on hold until the due process hearing has ended. PACER has a publication entitled Filing a Complaint with MDE that guides you through this process. The information and form to file is also available on the MDE website. Next slide. If you think you or your child, with or without a disability, is experiencing discrimination based on race, religion, disability, national origin, sex, marital status, familial status, age, sexual orientation, or gender identity, a civil rights complaint may be filed with your school district, the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, or the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights. If the filing is for disability discrimination, a person must meet the state definition of having a disability under the Minnesota Human Rights Act, which defines disability as any condition or characteristic that renders a person as a disabled person. A disabled person is defined as any person who, one, has a physical, sensory, or mental impairment which materially limits one or more major life activity, 2, has a record of such an impairment, or 3, is regarded as having such impairments. This may include students with 504 plans or IEPs. If the complaint is filed with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, it will be assigned to an investigator. If they determine that it needs to be forwarded to the Office of Civil Rights, they will do that. MDE, the Minnesota Department of Education, does not have the authority to investigate discrimination complaints. We will include more information and links for you on filing complaints, and you can always call PACER to speak with an advocate. Next slide. So we've talked about effective communication with the school and options for resolving disagreements. But when trust between parents and school staff has been broken, resolution can require some additional steps. The first step to restoring trust is to acknowledge that it has been broken. It's most effective to state this in a factual and non-blaming manner. Ways to rebuild trust might include defining action steps and expectations and requesting that these be provided to you in writing. Requesting a summary letter in writing following a meeting can be helpful to confirm that you and the staff are on the same page. You can hold individuals on the team accountable by asking, who will complete this next step? Or when will we meet to review the data? And asking that these plans be shared again in writing. If you have questions about something, be sure to ask for clarification. Keep in mind that you don't need to sign a proposal you do not agree with. Pay close attention to dates on paperwork and the 14-day timeline for a prior written notice, which is provided you with the opportunity to exert your rights in special education system. Trust can be rebuilt by acknowledging challenges and working together to make changes that create a new experience of effective communication and problem solving. Next slide. This is a quote that I think applies to all facets of life, but is particularly appropriate for what we've discussed today. You and the school staff are a team working together to meet the needs of your child. Each member brings their own gifts, experiences, and knowledge to the table. As the parent, you know your child better than anyone else. Educational professionals bring their years of experience and training to educational planning conversations. You may not always agree, and there's no doubt that it takes a lot of hard work, but maintaining a collaborative mindset of listening, asking questions, and openly sharing perspectives and ideas as a team will enable your child to move forward with an appropriate plan on their educational journey. Next slide. This has been a lot of information presented quickly. We will be providing you with resources and links for more information, but you are also welcome to reach out to a PACER advocate at any time to further explore this topic of working toward positive educational outcomes. You will be receiving a survey on our training today. We base our changes and additions to the presentations we offer based on your feedback, so we'd appreciate you taking the time to complete it. It's been great to spend the noon hour with all of you. I will open up and see if there's any questions in the question box.
I'm not seeing any questions right now, Karen, but
Okay.
maybe if we give some people some time. Some people did ask about the resources in the slide deck, and I put those in the chat,
Okay.
so people should be able to access, but they'll also be included they're included on that reminder email people received 1 hour before the event,
Okay.
and they'll also be included on the follow-up email that they'll receive tomorrow about 1 p.m. And I'm also, somebody asked about the recording, and I will try to get that. I just put a link to PACER's YouTube channel that includes our recordings, and this one will appear on that once available. And but I'll also include a link to that channel in that follow-up email.
Perfect. Thanks, Jamie. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I think that's it for today. And like we mentioned before, there'll be resources coming to you, and also our website has several resources, and always feel free to call. Oh, yep. I see a
Yep,
question.
one just popped in.
I am a teacher and work in mental health. My colleagues and I have seen a lot of young people with mental health struggles be pushed out of their schools into online settings, especially high schools. I'm wondering if you have observed this and what work is being done to support schools. So if switching a student from an in-person environment to an online learning platform is a change of placement. So that would require the school to present the parent with a prior written notice, and the parent has an opportunity to disagree with that decision. So if they're feeling pushed out, it's important to stay in the process, request that prior written notice, request any proposal from the school in writing so that the family has an opportunity to disagree with the decision. Again, if a family is having trouble navigating that, calling Pacer, a Pacer advocate can help them navigate through that as well. And I think, it's definitely been a difficult year. I know there's a lot of staff shortages within schools, and I think that's led to some of this, reduced support. But that said, even with staff shortages, schools are still obligated to support students and have them in their least restrictive environment. Do you have any ideas on how to get a district to help teachers with the time it takes to modify content for children on, tell me more about that. Time it takes to modify content for children on alternative assessment. I think speaking with your administration on that, I don't know that it's necessarily something that Pacer can help with as far as, communication between the teachers and the district, but definitely voicing those concerns and asking for help with that. Anything else? Okay. Thanks again for joining us today.
Did you see there was I don't know if there, you
is there
saw
another one?
there are more
Sorry.
resources.
Sorry, I didn't scroll down.
Okay, yeah, get the couple.
Okay, thanks. Is there more resources for IEPs for preschool children in daycare centers? We do have an advocate who specializes in early childhood. So yes, look at our website. You can put in the search box early childhood or preschool, or call as well. And you could speak to an advocate who has expertise in that area. Okay.
And that is all I am seeing, other than a thank you
right.
for your answer on the earlier one.
Yes, of course. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Okay, with that, thanks, Karen. I will end today.